I caught you cheating, Susan. I had just returned from a business trip when my mother-in-law suddenly came at me with a triumphant grin. Cheating? Having no recollection whatsoever, I had no choice but to echo her words. She probably thought I was playing dumb. Her voice got stronger as she continued in a tone as if she were closing in on a culprit. I had a hidden camera set up in the car. Lately I've noticed some things left behind that don't belong to our family. They're men's belongings, and not just once, but several times. I've been suspecting that a man, other than a family member, has been riding in our car. That's why when you took the dash cam for repair, I was convinced. You tried to cover up evidence under the guise of repair, didn't you? And then you conveniently mentioned going on a business trip. You've been with your affair partner all this time, making sure you won't be caught on the dash cam. But unfortunately for you, I had my own camera set up. I'm sure everything has been captured on it. There are 2 cars at my in-laws' house, and one of them was used by everyone living there, which included me. The car that is for everyone's use is equipped with an interior dash cam that records details of things that take place both on the road and inside the car. My guess is that my mother-in-law had it set up in an attempt to gather evidence of my infidelity. That's why when I sent it for repairs, she immediately assumed that it was to conceal evidence. I was at a loss for words. My mother-in-law has set up a dash cam and has accused me without even bothering to check what she has captured, all to prove her theory of me having an affair. Why does she suspect me to this extent and confidently assert that I'm cheating? It was most likely because I used to work as a hostess at a hostess bar during my college days. My family was not wealthy, and so I worked as a hostess to earn money to pay for my college tuition. My parents suggested I apply for student loans, but I declined as I heard they can take several decades to pay off. Working as a hostess was a good job for a college student. It may not have the best reputation in society, but because it didn't interfere with academic pursuits, but provided valuable social learning experiences, the job had advantages for students. I had flexible working hours, working mainly at night, and so I was able to plan around my classes and other extracurricular activities. Socializing with men in their 40s and 50s also provided me with opportunities to learn about economic structures and various aspects of different industries. In fact, the knowledge I gained while working has been useful in my current job. I was still a student working as a hostess when I started dating my husband, Mike. It was he who saved me when a drunk customer who had followed me on my way home tried to take me to a hotel. Mike understood my job and he was okay with it. After graduating from college, I started working at the same company as him, although in a different department. Mike was always hesitant to tell his family about my days working as a hostess, saying that his mother had conservative views. You don't work as a hostess anymore, so you don't need to mention it to them yet. If we decide to get married, I'll tell them myself. I agreed with him and we continued our relationship without disclosing my past to his family. However, Susan, is it true that you used to work as a hostess at a hostess bar? One day, we were visiting Mike's parents over the weekend. This was before we got married. Mike's mother began to speak, once the 2 of us were alone in the room. There's no way I can allow a woman like you to date my son. You need to break up with him and get out of his life immediately. Hold on a moment. I'm not the type of person you imagine me to be. I used to work at a lounge, just serving and entertaining clients over drinks, nothing more. Be quiet, you filthy woman. His mother raised her voice hysterically and pounced on me. Just then, Mike returned. Mom, what's going on here? As he stepped between his mother and me, he looked at us, alternately saying, Calm down and talk to me. This woman was a hostess, did you know? Yeah, she used to work at a lounge, just sitting next to clients, serving drinks, and having conversations. I knew that. So why didn't you tell me? Mike sighed deeply. Because I knew this would happen. I was waiting for the right time to talk to you about it. How did you find out anyway? With some hesitation, his mother replied in a faltering tone. Melissa started talking about how she wanted to work as a hostess to earn money. She apparently came across a top all-time popular hostesses article online and found Susan. Melissa is Mike's younger sister. She's into flashy things, has a tendency to change boyfriends frequently, and definitely fits the typical image of a hostess in general. So it's okay if your own daughter wants to become a hostess, but it's not okay for anyone else? As Mike spoke with a mixture of exasperation and disbelief, his mother's voice grew shrill. I never said it was okay for her. How rude. But you didn't scold her like this, did you? Well, when you brought this woman here the first time, I thought she was a respectable young lady, and I was relieved. I didn't know she was a filthy woman. She deceived us. Susan is indeed very responsible. She worked as a hostess to pay for her tuition, not for mere leisure like Melissa. She didn't neglect her studies and quit right after she graduated. She even secured a position at a reputable company. Her performance at work is even better than mine. At these words, his mother clenched her lips in frustration, while I was deeply moved. He stood up for me as I was being condemned. But I couldn't help but feel concerned about the deteriorating relationship between myself and the woman who could become my mother-in-law. Just as I was contemplating the challenges of marrying Mike, despite my love for him, he surprised me with a proposal. But what about your mother? She would absolutely be against us getting married. Don't worry about her. My dad used to take his clients to lounges with hostess services for business, so he understands. He actually helped me convince my mom. Really? Absolutely. While I was skeptical, Mike was full of confidence. I couldn't quite shake off my anxiety, but still, I chose to trust him and nodded in agreement. Our plan was to find a place for the two of us to live together after getting married. Mike, being the second son, always joked that if anyone should live with their parents, it should be the eldest son. His older brother wasn't married at the time but had a fiancée, and so I naturally assumed they would be the ones to move in with my in-laws. But then, we'd rather have Mike live with us. To my surprise, my mother-in-law, who had previously belittled me and criticized me as the filthy woman, was the one who brought up such a proposition. I couldn't fathom her intentions, but since we had already pushed through with the marriage against her wishes, I couldn't refuse. When Mike voiced his worries, asking if I was going to be okay, I confidently assured him that I was going to be fine. Shortly after our marriage, we began living at Mike's parents' house. Our newlywed life consisted of living together with my in-laws and sister-in-law. Melissa had actually gotten married a little before us, but her husband was immediately assigned to an overseas business trip, so she remained at her parents' house. Just like Mike said, my father-in-law was understanding and treated me kindly. It helped that I had experience conversing with older men, so our talks were quite engaging. My mother-in-law didn't seem to approve of that aspect of me either. She's just fooling you, dear. I could hear such backbiting quite frequently. She spread rumors in the neighborhood about me being filthy, and when she saw the designer items I had received during my days as a hostess, she would make snide remarks about my spending habits. At first, Mike and my father-in-law would scold her, but the shrewd woman eventually started to harass me when they weren't around. Hey, since you're so extravagant with your spending, you shouldn't be keeping money around. Just leave it all to me, and I'll manage it for you. She had the audacity to come to my room and say that. It left me dumbfounded. I'm not wasting money. These designer items aren't recent purchases. Plus, if I were to entrust anyone with my money, it would be Mike. You're just deceiving Mike. Even if you gave it to him, you'd just pester him for money and end up spending it all. I should be the one to hold on to it. Besides, the other day, I saw you coming home after drinking with a man. You really have a thing for men. That man was my boss. If you work for a company, it's natural to occasionally socialize over drinks, isn't it? Always making excuses. Just hand over your money to me. I was at a loss for words, but because I'm not someone who spends a lot of money in the first place, it wouldn't inconvenience me much, even if I were to give her a portion of my salary. So I replied, I guess I could give you about half of my salary, but remember, it's my money that you'll be managing, so don't use any of it. How could you say that? You are really rude. That's how I ended up giving half of my salary to my mother-in-law each month. She would come to my room to collect my salary each month, perhaps to keep it a secret from Mike and my father-in-law. Melissa, my sister-in-law, was more favorable towards me. She would approach me in a friendly manner and ask about my days as a hostess, or seek advice on her friendships. I appreciated her being friendly with me, but it wasn't exactly comforting, given that she was far more reckless with her money than me, but never got scolded for it. Plus, I've noticed that she's been occasionally taking and using my personal belongings without permission. In the beginning, she quietly borrowed them and returned them, but eventually she stopped returning them. My mother-in-law's behavior was escalating as well. She would follow me when I went out on my days off, and if I spoke to a man at all, she would take photos claiming it as evidence of infidelity. She'd show these photos to Mike and my father-in-law, insisting over and over again that I was having an affair and that I should be kicked out. I want to trust you. After being shown evidence of infidelity by my mother-in-law for who knows how many times, Mike spoke to me with powerless words that seemed to contradict his true feelings. But the number of photos my mom brings to me, isn't it excessive? Have you been meeting men behind my back? No way, I interrupted him out of shock. Your mom takes photos of random people I bump into or people asking me for directions. Strangers I absolutely don't know. Yeah, you're right, sorry. Mike's voice lacked energy, and I didn't feel he fully believed me. Melissa would buy into everything my mother-in-law said, often commenting, whether maliciously or not, "Susan, you really have a lot of men wrapped around your finger. That's amazing." Her words seemed to be taking a toll on Mike as well. My mother-in-law's boast about having caught me red-handed came amidst this ongoing tension. I finally got definitive proof of Susan's infidelity. With that, she summoned my father-in-law, Mike, and Melissa to watch the hidden camera footage with her. I knew everyone was suspicious of me. Due to my mother-in-law's outrageous behavior, even Mike started to think I might be cheating. But just as strongly as my mother-in-law insisted on her evidence, I had absolute confidence that I hadn't done anything wrong. And at that moment, only I knew about the shocking footage that was about to disappoint my mother-in-law's expectations greatly. My mother-in-law pressed the play button. Immediately, the inside of the car was projected on the screen. Everyone except me held their breath. What appeared on screen was in fact Melissa, indecently dressed and flirting with a man. That's right, I was the only one who knew about this. The man's belongings that did not belong to the family, as my mother-in-law had put it, were the belongings of Melissa's lover. What? Wait, what's going on? My mother-in-law spoke so fast and pressed the pause button on the remote several times, but perhaps due to her panicking, her fingers couldn't actually press the button, and the image of Melissa in disarray continued to play. Melissa's voice filled the room. "Stop it, turn it off!" she cried out in a voice filled with anguish, on the verge of tears. Why did this happen? But Melissa deleted all the footage from the dashcam. When I opened my mouth, everyone turned to look at me. Clearing my throat, I continued. Earlier, your mother didn't mention that this footage was from her hidden camera. You let your guard down because you thought you had deleted your own affair from the dashcam, leaving only mine. Melissa, with a look of despair, directed her gaze towards her mother. Why would you put a hidden camera? That's awful, it's like you're spying. If you wanted to capture Susan's infidelity, you should have at least told me about the camera. And why didn't you check what was being recorded? I can't believe this. Those words sparked anger on Mike's stunned face. What the heck? You're okay if Susan is the victim of a hidden camera, but not you? Cut the crap. It's okay, Mike, I said and continued. You know, Melissa, dashcam data is usually stored on a memory card and can be recovered even after being deleted. The dashcam was acting up, and because I knew that you'd been deleting things, I had it restored while it was being repaired, so your affair is recorded on the dashcam too. Oh, and obviously there's nothing of mine. I never cheated. Tears welled up in Melissa's eyes as she stared at me. Why? Why would you do this to me? We were getting along so well. Normally, you don't just take things that belong to someone you're close to, do you? And didn't you, along with your mother, keep saying that I was having an affair? If it really was a relationship based on mutual respect, we wouldn't do such things to each other. It's only natural to be angry if someone does that. I didn't take anything without permission. Melissa passionately argued to the point of straining her voice, but such lies won't hold up. Yes, you have. I even have evidence. You didn't notice the hidden camera in my room that has been set up for a long time now, did you? Yes, for a long time. I could see my mother-in-law's body tense up at those words. A smile crept up on my face. Well, it looks like you finally figured it out. It's captured on camera the day you came to my room and accused me of being extravagant with money, demanding that I hand over my salary. I even have footage that shows you coming to my room every month to collect the money. My mother-in-law's face turned deep red. That's because you squander your money. I was just holding on to it for you. So where's all this money you've been holding on to for me? No rebuttal came. My mother-in-law's face remained red, and her teeth clenched in frustration. I know what you were up to. You've been following me every time I leave the house, but I've also been following you when you go out. And you know what? You've been going to male strip clubs, haven't you? Multiple times a week. You needed money for your addiction. Is that true? After all the criticism you gave Susan for working at a hostess lounge, you've been spending all the money at strip clubs? My father-in-law finally spoke up. He looked at my mother-in-law intently, as if pleading with his eyes. She lowered her gaze. Well, it's true in a way. I may have gone there occasionally, but... Susan, can we see the footage from your hidden camera? When my father-in-law spoke, my mother-in-law unleashed her words as if she had been struck. There's no need for that. Having a hidden camera in the first place is despicable. But you did the same, didn't you? Mike said with a sigh. Moreover, you were the one who placed hidden cameras in the car used by all of us and secretly followed and took photos of Susan. Susan only had a camera in her own room. Which do you think is more despicable? Once again, my mother-in-law seemed at a loss for words. I went to fetch the camera in my room with my father-in-law and we checked the footage. There was Melissa stealing my belongings and my mother-in-law demanding money and coming to collect it. Everything was recorded. I am truly sorry. Once we finished watching the footage, my father-in-law apologized. Even when I told him it was okay, he wouldn't stop apologizing. Mike joined him and apologized to me as well. I screwed up. I should have stopped Mom from following you and taking photos. I let my own insecurities get the better of me. I'm sorry. He looked up with worried eyes and asked, Can I still be your husband, Susan? Of course you can. At my words, Mike finally smiled. My father-in-law demanded my mother-in-law to return the money to me and also served her with divorce papers. Despite her pleas of having no money and begging him not to leave her, my father-in-law was resolute and they ultimately divorced. She is now working full-time in order to repay me and cover her living expenses. I'm sure she doesn't have any spare time to visit strip clubs anymore. Melissa was kicked out of the house and her husband, who was still on his business trip abroad, left her as well. It didn't seem like she was particularly bothered by the divorce, perhaps because she had always been averse to being tied down by one man. On the other hand, what seemed to hit her hard was having to repay me for the numerous designer items she stole from me. She finally started working as a hostess, but not being particularly bright or street smart, she doesn't seem to be doing well. There's even talk of her turning into a sex worker to make ends meet. While I can't say for certain, it seems she's desperate to make money. As for me, I'm living happily with Mike and my father-in-law in my father-in-law's home. As expected, conversations with my father-in-law flowed smoothly. My husband would often ask to join in, maybe because he was jokingly jealous of our relationship. The three of us laugh and enjoy our time together every day.